With the story that we started talking about a bit more yesterday, and we continue with it today. Palesa?
All right, thank you so much, Peter. Very concerning indeed, as there were two incidents that once again put the spotlight on the problem of violence in schools. In Eldorado Park, south of Johannesburg, a learner allegedly used a gun to threaten a teacher who managed to take the gun away. And in Dinokeng, near Zeerust in the northwest province, another learner allegedly stepped and killed a teacher. We've heard the Basic Education Minister, Angie, basically saying that her department has noted with concern the scourge of violence that has gripped schools. Now, in light of the social ills that have plagued the schools community in the recent weeks, the Department of Basic Education has also called for an interdepartmental symposium to address school violence. But now, let us hear what pupils themselves have to say on this matter. Joining us now in our studios in Johannesburg is the Congress of South African Students, COSAS President, John Macheke. We also have Dr. Tumi Diale. Dr. Diale is education psychologist from the University of Johannesburg. Good afternoon to both of you. Thank you so much for coming through. And John, really, I suppose let's start with you. Your reaction as COSAS on the spate of violent activities that we have seen in our schools recently?
It's very fortunate that we as COSAS have been speaking with the Department of Education about this issue of safety. We had a march to the Department of Education. We also went to the President to submit a memorandum about the safety of learners and teachers in our own schools. So it's a problem that we have in the entire country. I think this thing is a national thing. We have to resolve it as a nation.
Exactly what I wanted to ask you, John, to say, do we really have to now put the blame solely on the Department of Basic Education?
No, we don't have to put the blame to the Department of Education alone, but also they are a problem. I think also even our communities contribute towards this violence that we are having in our own schools. The environment that we live in as young people also take a place in these violences that we are having in our own schools.
All right, let me just pose my question like this before I come to you, Dr. Diale. COSAS, you there representing the learners. What have you done? We've seen you, of course, holding media briefings, issuing statements, condemning this act. But let's talk about the actual plan of action that you have done to, sort of make sure that this problem goes away.
As COSAS, we've been addressing camps of matriculants. We've been traveling to different schools. For an example, now I'm from Northwest. My original home is in Northwest. I'm here in Johannesburg because of COSAS. I'm a president of COSAS. We've been visiting schools, addressing schools, speaking to our fellow comrades, telling them that, no, a teacher is a very important person in our lives. They are the ones that build our future. We have to respect them. They also have to respect us as young people. We cannot wait for an incident to happen like this one, where Elena stepped the teacher. So we stand up and say, no, we must fight against this thing of learners beating teachers.
Well, it looks like you're being reactive. Just hold a thought right there. Let me just bring Dr. Diale into the conversation. What is happening in our schools, Dr. Diale? It looks like the situation has gotten out of hands. What needs to be done? Is this a societal problem, or is it a problem that can be addressed only by the Department of Basic Education?
I think it's more of a micro instead of a macro. Society, who is society? We are society. And if we have to talk about violence in school, the very same children who are violent come from systems, from family systems. So the basic of violence, it's just the symbolic violence that starts within the family system itself. Because really, let us be honest, the Department of Education has done its best, or it's doing its best to cap. But now they've tried to look at violence in terms of violence that comes from outside to protect the children within the yard. But if the violence is within the yard by the children or the learners themselves, then it means this child has carried, the whole anger from somewhere. And this child comes from a system, which is the family. So we really have to relook at family systems.
All right. So, but how does a child get to a point of deciding to bring a gun or a knife to school psychologically? So is it a symbol or a sign of how broken we are as the nation?
Part of it, yes, but it's a symbol of how broken we are. But also, I don't think there's a child who wakes up normal and under normal circumstances and say, I'll take a knife or a gun. The fact that you bring a gun, you have planned.
Because
And
let's take, for example, what happened in Zeerust in the Northwest Province, because allegedly a teacher had reprimanded that particular learner a day before. So the next day he came to school with a knife. So this was planned.
That's why I say it's a planned reaction. And the planned reaction, we might sit and look at it at a bigger picture of saying, okay, this learner has stabbed the teacher at school. But this learner came from home, planned that I'm going to do this because it's a grudge that I have from yesterday. But if a child can hold a grudge for an adult, then it says within the system itself, within the family system itself, there is something that we are missing as parents. And the biggest question, before we can ask the Department of Education, let us ask ourselves as parents, can we really parent? Do we really know how to parent? Or do our children parent themselves that they end up being where they are?
Can we parent our children?
That's the question I'm asking, that can we parent? You know, I think I've said this many a times, and I will repeat it again, to say if I look at my generation, and I'll talk about my generation in the 80s, pre-94, when really in the townships it was bad. I was a high school child. I was the one who was against, one of the people who were against, I was a COSAS of the time, against, you know, the whole issue of white supremacy and all that. And at that time, we took out parenting from our parents. So we never learned what parenting really means. Now we are parents and our own kids, we don't know how to parent. We actually are purely letting our kids to grow. They bring up themselves, they just see how do I just become a person. And we need to start there to say, let us just take a back step and say, where have we started going wrong as parents? Before we can even say, where have the school gone wrong or where has the Department of Education gone wrong? It's where have we as a microsystem within the family system gone wrong? Do we really have healthy family systems? Do we really have healthy family structures? And by family structures, I don't mean a father, a mother, because there are excellent kids who come from single households. But within a family, whatever you define a family to be, is it a healthy family system?
I suppose that is important, as they say that charity begins at home. Now, you talk about security being upgraded in schools. What exactly do you think will assist in this regard?
For an example, they've been putting boards in our own schools that says, don't come with a knife, don't come carrying a gun into school premises. But that thing is not assisting us. We need a proper security infrastructure that will be able, when you enter into a school, you must be scanned. That scan will be on the gate. We don't need a security card to come and scan you.
But if the scanner is at the gate, for example, the school premises they big. They can smuggle in guns and knives through fence, for example.
We're having a system of double fences. This one, the Department of Education has tried to implement it, but they have not yet reached their own target. We're having double fence in different schools, so even when a person is outside, they cannot reach us as learners, which are inside schools. So it's a simple thing that must be implemented into our own schools. For an example, we can look at all departments of education. They have proper security. They have everything there. But our schools where there is majority of young people, where there is majority of learners, there's no security. This incident doesn't only affect teachers, it affects also learners, because learners kill other learners. Learners kill teachers. Teachers also do the very same thing to learners. For an example, there was a learner who was being beaten by a teacher. He died. So this thing is something that is there. But for it to be resolved, we have to work together as different organizations and different people coming from different communities.
All right. You want to come in there,
Yes,
Dr.
I just
Diale?
want to come in. I don't know if we really will be a healthy society if we want to turn schools to be prisons. If we say now we have to have security, we are turning schools to be prisons, and schools should be the safest place where a child away from home feels the most safest. They spend 8 hours of their time or 7 hours of their day in that space.
Yeah.
So if we are going to turn schools to be prisons where we have a security guard here, where we have cameras everywhere, what are we saying about education? What is actually education? So whilst I acknowledge what you are saying, I'm I'm really against from a psychological perspective. If I'm going to walk into a space that I feel like I'm walking into a prison, I might as well be in a prison.
Yeah.
What is the difference of then walking into a schoolyard and walking into a prison if the security system should be at C-max?
Yeah, time constraints, a quick one.
There's a difference between having security and being in prison. Remember also the Department of Education that we're having, even the institution that it comes from, UJ, there are security guards on the gate. Yeah. They are maintaining
but
the entire building.
I'm sitting here, John, thinking that you would actually tell me that you will have campaigns and visits to the different schools to go talk to the learners. Do you not think that is more tangible to address the problem from the root where it is?
We're having a campaign, as I've said. We're working with SAT, we're working with the Department of Education. We just had a meeting. We're going to have a stakeholder workshop with the Department of Education and the other stakeholders. Nurses, doctors, they will be there. They are part of QLTC. Will be moving in the entire country in different provinces, addressing this issue of violence, instilling discipline and that moralness of Ubuntu in our own schools.
All right. Dr. Diale, Interdepartmental symposium to be held by the Department of Basic Education. Is this perhaps a step in the right direction going forward?
I think it is. I mean, if we take a child, within the system, a child belongs to three major stakeholders: Department of Education, Department of Health, and Department of Social Development. And if these departments don't work together, we are missing social ills that are happening. The teacher is concentrating in the class. But if this child has issues that have to do with the psychosocial well-being, and the Department of Social Welfare is not there, the Department of Health in terms of mental health, it's not there, then we are missing. So we really have to see how are these stakeholders playing a role together in improving a child.
Sure, time constraints. I'm afraid we have to leave it at this, but of course, this is very topical. Surely we'll have to revisit this topic. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much.
All right, many thanks to my guest this afternoon, John Macheke. He's the president of the Congress of South African Students, COSAS, talking to us about this situation. And we're also joined by Dr. Tumi Diale. Dr. Diale is education psychologist from the University of Johannesburg.